Hey everybody, welcome back. Turnpike to Turnpike Fantasy Football 2013. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Babula, and I'm coming to you live from our league headquarters in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. This is the Week 2 preview show. Well, Week 1 is in the books. It seemed like it took forever, starting with that opening game Thursday night with Peyton Manning's incredible performance against the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens, on through all the games Sunday, then 2 games Monday, and finally the first week is in the books. And by the grace of God, it's over because it wasn't what I was expecting. I know it made me a humble guy. I know I'm a humble guy, Just look at me. I just want to apologize to a couple people I may have offended over my evaluation of your teams in the beginning of the season. Clearly, I do not know as much as I think I know about fantasy football, and that is quite evident by my team's production this past week. So let's get to it. Let's look at last week's matchups. First up, we have my defending league champion, Warriors of Babylon, taking on Greg Long's Get Work Done, and my team laid an egg in this one. Not really laid an egg so much, but when Peyton Manning scores 63 points for you in the first game of the season, he is on pace to throw 119 touchdowns this season, which I think would be a record. Greg also got 18 points out of Owen Daniels, and he also got a nice 16 points out of Wes Welker. My squad didn't perform too bad for 116 points. I did get 21 points out of my boy, Vernon Davis. I also got 20 points out of Larry Fitzgerald and 19 points out of Tony Romo. So yeah, that wasn't the prettiest of matchups I could have had. Peyton he can't play that well every game. If he does, we might as well just give Greg the trophy right now. But I think that there's going to be a lot of football left, and I think there's going to be a lot of better defenses that Peyton Manning's going to have to face. And he might not throw 7 every week. He might throw 4 a week, though. So great pick, Greg. I think we're all going to be playing a lot of catch-up against you this season. In the next match from last week, we have Deputy Commissioner Chris Long's Asgardian Thunder Gods taking on Anthony Parisi's Woodbury Wankers. And again, humble pie all around. Chris and I had snickered about Anthony's draft picks, snickered about his draft strategy, which, by the way, he still does have Jeremy Maclin and Dustin Keller on his roster. Neither one of these players is going to play a snap this season. He has not dropped either of them, and they're still there. But yet, Anthony wins this one, 138-87. Chuckle all we wanted to at the first pick that Anthony made at the draft. Reggie Bush, 42 points for Anthony. Anthony also got 18 points out of Tom Brady and 16 points out of Hakeem Nicks, as well as 19 points out of Jason Witten. Where Deputy Commissioner Chris Long didn't have the kind of output that he expected for 87 points. He got 25 out of his quarterback, Andrew Luck. He got 15 out of Jamal Charles and another 15 out of Danny Amendola, and that will probably be the last we see of Danny Amendola for a couple weeks. That was a risky draft pick. I think Chris knew it going in. Danny Amendola gets nicked up a lot. He's nicked up right away. He probably won't be going in tomorrow or Thursday night's game against the New York Jets. And in the next matchup that we had last week, we have Brian Sheehan's 1 gram equals a pound taking on Jeff Szymanski Paper Tiger. Jeff Szymanski wins this one 133-85. Jeff got 32 points out of Matt Stafford. He got 28 points out of Julius Thomas. Great tight end pick there that I think he picked up off waivers after the draft. More on that in a second. And he also got 21 points out of Deshaun Jackson, who he just made a trade for with Matt Dreyfus. Excellent trade. Jeff really made out for that. He did have Anquan Boldin on his bench. Anquan Boldin scored 36 points on his bench, but you can't beat him up for it because he did win his game. If he lost this game and Anquan was on his bench, I'd be beating him up for it. Where Sheehan got 25 points out of Robert Griffin III. He also got 19 points out of Andre Johnson and 12 points out of his St. Louis Rams defense. Notice that I did not mention Jimmy Graham, his tight end pick, his second-round tight end pick. The tight end that made him have to play Vic Ballard this past game. Brian's in trouble. That luxury pick of taking a tight end there in the second round, the very first tight end taken when he needed running backs, came back to bite him. Jeff, perfect example, had a tight end going in this game that he picked up off waivers before the season started, and he outscored Jimmy Graham 28-10. Now, I'm not saying Jimmy Graham's a bad player. Definitely not. It's just a risky pick right there, Brian, and I think you're going to be paying for it for the rest of the season with that running back tandem you have, or conundrum, I should call it. In the next matchup of last week, we have John Moore's Downingtown Destroyers taking on Mike Bond's Eastfall Jedi. And let me tell you something, guys, this was a great match. Mike Bond was leading this one pretty much from jump because he had 45 points from Demaryius Thomas. He also had 25 points from Matt Ryan, and he also had 12 points out of Ray Rice. John Moore had a tremendous game himself out of Colin Kaepernick for 40 points, 21 points out of Randall Cobb. Then he got 29 out of Shady McCoy, who looks to be a tremendous, tremendous pick, John. More on that in a second. And then he got 7 points from his kicker. And the reason I'm saying that, Randy Bullock's 7 points gave him the one extra point that he needed to top Mike Bond, 129-128 in the first week, 1 point match of the week this week, guys. I know Bond was very upset by it. I'm sure, John, you were ecstatic by that win. And I want to talk about that because, John, your team is really stacked. I know I said it last week. This team is scary good. I've had conversations with people around the office. I've had conversations with emails with different people around the league. Your team's very good, and we're interested to see how this turns out for you because we all know you haven't made the playoffs, but you have a team that can not only win the playoffs, I think you can win the whole thing. Good job drafting. You did a great job strategizing before your draft, and I think you did fantastic. And you know you got my boy Colin. Then we've got Jeffrey Hezekiah Golden Bombs, Hamilton Square Possum, taking on Matt Dreyfus's Off in a Corner. And Matt wins this one 136-114, another high-scoring game. Matt got 46 points out of Victor Cruz, somebody he seems to have on his roster every season. He got 37 points out of A.J. Green. And he also got 13 points out of his quarterback, Cam Newton. Where Jeff got 29 points out of his tight end, Jared Cook, 20 points out of Vincent Jackson, as well as 23 out of his quarterback, Russell Wilson. Great matchup, guys. This is I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but this team is built very uniquely that Matt has here, and it goes against a lot of conventional thinking, a lot of old school fantasy football thinking, and it's going to make me shut my mouth in the future. And then in the last matchup, we have just an absolute blowout between Kenny Long's Gladiators taking on Bobby Crane's Julius Jones. And after I trumpeted Bob's team last week and talked how great David Wilson, that pick, looked, wow, Kenny just took him to the woodshed, 143-71. David Wilson, my hero from last week, and congratulations all around to Bobby for picking him. -3 after the 2 fumbles and then the benching. On the bright side, Bobby did get 26 points out of Drew Brees. He also got 11 out of Jermichael Finley, and as well as 11 out of his running back, Ryan Matthews. And then you've got, what can you say about these two players? Aaron Rodgers and Adrian Peterson on the same team. Kenny got 40 points out of Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson took the very first possession of the game that he got, the first handoff, and rumbled 78 yards for a touchdown. And Kenny never looked back. He also got 30 points out of Aaron Rodgers and 24 points out of Jordy Nelson. That was the first week. A lot of things I noticed. There were some observations, and I'm an old school fantasy football player, and I've always been taught it's running back, and I've been thinking that for my entire life, and that's how I built my squad. There's a new school of thinking out there that's wide receivers that you should be going heavy on because it's more of a passing league now. And looking at where these games went this week, the guys who won had high-scoring quarterbacks and they had high-scoring wide receivers. Quarterback you can always get later, but these top-flight wide receivers, Matt Dreyfus is pairing up A.J. Green with Victor Cruz. That's going to be a dynamic wide receiving core for him. And then you've got people like Peyton Manning throw into an incredible wide receiving core out there. Peyton's going to be putting up big numbers. Drew Brees will put up big numbers. But those wide receivers, Des Bryant, I'm a little disappointed with this past week. But Calvin, Calvin had a weird game because he had 2 touchdowns taken off the board. But those wide receivers are going to prove to be very big commodities this year. So I just wanted to congratulate you guys on, again, shutting my mouth, which isn't always easy to do. Speaking of shutting my mouth, I've noticed that these videos have been going a little long lately. And I know that a lot of you have asked maybe we could slow them down, or speed them up rather, slow them down, God. So I'm going to try to do that. And one of the things I think I'm going to do, because I'm kind of getting bored of it, and it's kind of getting tedious, and I know you guys listen to me every week, and you're like, oh my God, I got to listen to this asshole again, and you feel you got to do it out of a labor of love. You really don't want to. But then you got to sit through the Meet the Manager segment. And I think, I'm not saying this definitely, but I think I'm going to nix it this year. In fact, it's going to be a poll right here on the homepage. I want you guys to vote whether or not you want to see Meet the Manager continue. It's going to be a continue, discontinue. Whichever one has majority for next week, I will go with. But I just think it's going to keep it quicker. And we'll move through this, and we'll do the recap of last week's. I'll do my little spiel. And then we'll get into some other segments. It's things that go quicker. One thing that I do want to bring back this year, because everybody loved it last year, is I want to bring back Dear Bobby C. Thank you for that, Mr. Parisi. That was awesome. This week's question goes to Bob, Ask Bobby C. And this question is written by North Turner Must Die. And he asked Bob, I spent months preparing for the T2T draft and crafted a pretty solid plan. So I thought. My plan was based upon the fact that this year in fantasy football, the running back spot would be thin. So I drafted accordingly. After stockpiling several top-tier running backs, I felt strongly that my team would dominate. After week 1, I was less than impressed with their performance. What should I do moving forward this season? With only 12 or 11 to go, another effort like week 1's, and I will surely be observing the playoffs as a bystander. I look forward to your advice. Thank you. North Turner Must Die. Well, we got that question over to Bobby. And Bobby mulled on it, and I got a response from him just a little while ago. And he said, got your email, on vacation till Wednesday. I'll try to respond tonight. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate the insight. I'm sure that North Turner Must Die will appreciate your insight, and I really appreciate your commitment to this bit. Thank you very much. So, anyway, guys, vote on whether you want to see the Meet the Manager segment continue or die, like North Turner should, because he should run Trent Richardson 30 times a game. Or do you want to see the managers come back so I can talk to all of you guys and just get pearls of wisdom out of every one of you and understand your draft strategies? It's not to say we could do a call every once in a while if there's something going on in the league, there's a trade made, some kind of like a scuttle in the league on the message boards and we want to settle it, or some team makes a stupid move, and maybe we could do things like that. But I don't think we need to do a weekly Meet the Manager anymore. Maybe when we get to the playoffs we can bring it back. I don't know. It's just my thinking. Because right now we could just go right away into this coming week's matchups. Oh, and one more thing before I forget. I forgot to mention it just before. Remember, if you want to ask Bobby a question, send him an email. Send it to dearbobbyc@gmail.com. Again, that's dearbobbyc@gmail.com. You can ask him anything you want. Questions about fantasy football, life, love, anything. Bobby knows everything, and he will answer accordingly. So let's get to this coming week's matchups. And I come over here to my new spacious studio because I want to stretch out and I want to talk about some of these. And first one I want to talk about is a winner and a loser from last week. I want to talk about a big winner, and that is Greg Long taking on Brian Sheehan. We've got Get Work Done versus 1 gram equals a pound. So, here we go again. Will that tight end pick of Jimmy Graham pay off for Brian, or am I just going to beat that drum all season? I think that's what we're hearing all season. It's pretty loud drum beat. You got to take on Peyton Manning here, Brian. You got to take on a pretty tough squad with Wes Welker included, so he's got that connection. It's going to be a tough one for you, so good luck to both of you. Greg's trying to get off to a 2-0 start and get the Longs into that playoff contention that they all missed out on last year. as well as Brian's trying to avoid an 0-2 start. Up next, we've got Jeff Szymanski, Paper Tiger, taking on Jeff O'Reilly Hezekiah Golden Bombs, Hamilton Square Possum. This one this is going to be a close one. You've got another 1-0 guy with Jeff Szymanski and a 0-1 guy with Jeff Goldenbaum. We're talking about, a team here with Matt Stafford at quarterback taking on a team with Russell Wilson at quarterback, two pretty good teams, but Russell Wilson is taking on the San Francisco 49er defense. Maybe not so good, although they did take it to the Niners last year in Seattle, and this game this week is in Seattle. So we're talking about a tough match for the Niners to go into Seattle and shut Russell Wilson down. Up next, we've got Matt Dreyfus's off in the corner, 1-0, taking on 0-1. You see a pattern here? Taking on 0-1 Bobby Crane, Julius Jones. In this match, we've got, we've got Cam Newton taking on Drew Brees, two very highly rated quarterbacks. Cam Newton didn't look so great last week. He was taking on the Seattle Seahawks defense, so hopefully this week at Buffalo, Cam Newton will be able to look a little bit more like Cam Newton for Matt Dreyfus. Also, Bob's got, Drew Brees, obviously, at Tampa Bay. It doesn't matter where Drew Brees is. He's going to put up his points. He's got Calvin Johnson going at Arizona. Arizona doesn't have a really great defense. Look for Calvin Johnson to break out in a big way. But keep in mind, Matt Dreyfus does have that unbelievable wide receiver duo that he's got to deal with of A.J. Green, who's going to be taking on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh looks awful this year. And Victor Cruz against Denver. So that should be an interesting match. Up next, we've got Mike Bond's 0-1 Eastfall Jedi taking on Kenny Long's 1-0. Again, you see the pattern. The Gladiators. Much better team name, by the way, this year, Kenny. Gladiators like it a lot better than your Robert Griffin or whatever that was last year. I forget what it was even. But here's another member of the Long contingent trying to get into the playoffs again. And you've got Aaron Rodgers taking on Matt Ryan. Aaron Rodgers, of course, being on Kenny's team. Aaron Rodgers is going to be in Washington. And at home rather, versus Washington. And after watching Mike Vick torch that Washington Redskins secondary, you know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do to it. Then he's also got Adrian Peterson at Chicago. Doesn't matter where AP plays, you know he's going to get his. Where Bond has Matt Ryan home for St. Louis. It's a good matchup. He also has Ray Rice home for Cleveland. That should be a good matchup. And Demaryius Thomas at New York Giants. And that is going to be a tremendous matchup. If you saw the way that those Giants played the other night, they looked awful. Next up, we've got a 1-0 versus a 1-0. And in this match, we've got John Moore's dangerous Downingtown Destroyers taking on Anthony Parisi's Woodbury Wankers. Colin Kaepernick versus Tom Brady. Great quarterback matchup. And then you've got Reggie Bush, who Anthony's trying to make us all shut up about with that pick, taking on LaShawn McCoy. Now, LaShawn McCoy looks like he is just ready to have just a crazy season. And as I said earlier, I want to talk a little bit about that particular guy, John. This guy could lead the league in rushing this year. That was impressive the other night. Chip Kelly looks like he's got his mind on running the ball a million times, and it looks like Shady is going to be the benefactor of that offense. Great pick. I think that a lot of us who passed on him, Mike Bond, myself, Jeff Szymanski, are going to be really disappointed that we didn't take him over Trent Richardson, C.J. Spiller, and Ray Rice. So that's something to keep an eye on. Also, in this matchup, we've got Randall Cobb on John's team, and we also have Matt Forte going for Anthony Parisi. And in the last matchup of next week, we have my matchup with my good friend Chris Long in an 0-1 versus 0-1 match. Somebody's going to start this season out 0-2. We've got Tony Romo going up against Andrew Luck. I've got Romo at Kansas City. Romo looks like he's hurt. I don't care what they're saying in Dallas. I think they lie. Andrew Luck is home for Miami. I don't think that's any problem for Andrew Luck. Jamal Charles at Dallas. Don't think there's any problem for Jamal Charles. I have Trent Richardson at Baltimore. Baltimore is going to be trying to make a statement about their defense and what happened to them in Denver. Oh boy, this is going to be... I'm scared. I'm scared about this one. I got to be honest. I don't want to start 0-2, but I might. Sucks. It sucks. That's the price you get for winning this league, I guess. You get cursed. We'll find out. I'm League Commissioner Kevin Mabula. Bye.